The president is so far left, and I'll tell you this, the country is not there with him, and I don't suspect the country will be there with him anytime soon when you look at how he's approaching some of these social issues that I want to get to right now. Gwen Berry, come on. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish, and I'm sorry, but you know what? If you are lucky enough to be up on stage before the world, getting a bronze medal, you know what? I'm sure he worked hard. I'm sure he worked hard to get that bronze medal in the hammer throwing competition. But you know what else I know? I know that you wouldn't have had that opportunity except in this great country that does reward hard work, rewards athleticism, rewards people who work at school, who work in business. I mean, this is part of the American dream, right? And you're lucky enough to live it and to be on stage there before the world, getting a bronze medal, and somehow you consider it a setup. You're angry because the national anthem, the most beautiful song to most people, is their national anthem, right? That's why they play it for each and every winner up there. Anyway, she was angry. She said, oh, it was a setup. I was hot. I was ready to take my pictures and get into some shade. I didn't really want to be up there, she adds. My purpose, she said, and my mission is to be bigger than sports. You know, the president's team responded to this, and their attitude was that he wouldn't have done that. Jen Psaki, the mouthpiece for the administration, said, I haven't spoken to the president specifically about this, but I know he's incredibly proud to be American and he has great respect for the anthem and all that it represents. Good, right? You know what? Because he's our president. He ought to have great respect for the anthem and all that it represents. But then she went on to say, of course, that part of that pride in our country means recognizing that there are moments where we as a country haven't lived up to our highest ideals. And it means respecting the rights of people granted to them in the Constitution to peacefully protest. You know what? The peacefully protest thing, I can accept that. I can respect that. I respect our First Amendment. I will peacefully protest some of this administration's economic policy and social policy for that matter. But I'm sorry. You know what? If you're representing the United States of America as an Olympic athlete, just, you know what? Deal with it. Just deal with it, okay? Just do what you got to do for the minute and 10 seconds that they're playing our national anthem out of respect to the country that has given you so much in the way of opportunity. Anyway, Gwen Berry went on to say, my purpose and my mission is bigger than sports. I'm here to represent those who died due to systemic racism. That's the important part. That's why I'm going. That's why I'm here today. So we're back at systemic racism, which is, you know, the latest and greatest reason for anybody not being as successful as somebody else. Listen, this is a theory, critical race theory, that is being taught and being pushed onto America right now. And it's being done, frankly, if you ask me, to create a lot of division. It's being used for political purposes. It's stuff that, you know, look, 20, 30 years ago was out there in law schools and considered a little bit nutty, but it's become completely mainstream today. And yet not mainstream enough. And this is why I say that the administration is completely out of sync with the rest of America. There's a new poll I want to share with you the results on, a new Harvard-Harris poll in which they asked people, do you believe that kids in elementary school should be taught that America is structurally racist and is dominated by white supremacy, or should they not be taught this? 61% said they should not be taught this. 39% said that they should. 61%, think about that. I mean, that's encouraging, right? 39%, I don't know, you know, look, there's some crazy people out there, but at least it shows you that the majority of the country is not buying this, right? If you're a Black American, I don't think you want to look to structural racism anyway as a scapegoat. You want to believe that you have opportunity, the same opportunities. Don't get me wrong, there are socioeconomic challenges. But they have nothing to do with race, and they have everything to do with communities not holding their lawmakers responsible enough, right? I mean, kids in Chicago, they're still not in school. We'll see if they're back in school by September, but that's not that's not because of their skin color. It's because their lawmakers, frankly, have not served them well. But think about it. If you're a white kid growing up in poor parts of the South or in Appalachia, and you're dealing with the challenges there that are very, very real, and you may not have the same opportunity to get ahead. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin and everything to do with, unfortunately, a community that doesn't have the same kind of wherewithal, right, economically, to push their leaders and to demand more. And so consequently, you don't have the same opportunities as, frankly, an African-American kid who's growing up in, an affluent New England town. Sorry, again, none of it has to do with the color of anyone's skin. If you ask me, if you're born on the south side of Chicago, your lack of opportunity in life has something to do with the fact that you were born on the south side of Chicago and not anything to do with your skin color. But critical race theory would say, no, it has everything to do with skin color because there is structural racism that just cannot be broken through. I disagree with that. And again, most Americans disagree with that. 61% saying this should not be taught. This is what they want to teach right now. And that's a dangerous thing. Meanwhile, again, Americans just are not with this administration and the leftist insanity, because I was looking at another poll also by Harvard-Harris. 55% of Americans say Biden should have continued Donald Trump's southern border policies, while 45% disagreed. But 55%, again, the majority of the country wants to discourage illegal immigration. 68% said Biden's White House is encouraging illegal immigration. Only 32% said the administration is not. Look, when you hold up a big giant welcome sign and you say we're not going to turn anyone away and we're not going to make you stay in Mexico if you're applying for amnesty, and we're certainly not going to turn any families away or any children away, well, what do you have? You create, it's the law of unintended consequences. Or maybe it's intended in this case. If you listen to some people believe that this is a very deliberate attempt to get voters into this country that they hope, that they believe will vote for Democrats in the future. But whatever it is, it's very clear that they have extended a kind of welcome, almost as an antithesis, right, to what the previous administration had been doing, in part to say, hey, we're different. There's a new sheriff in town, and this sheriff isn't going to do a darn thing if you come here illegally. And so what are people doing? They're coming here illegally. Numbers are at a record high, 180,000. Last month alone, we've got tens of thousands of children that are in facilities now being housed by the federal government, fed, clothed by the federal government. This is not a sustainable situation. And yet, Kamala Harris, who's in charge of trying to do something about it, right? Well, she clearly doesn't want this gig, and she clearly isn't doing her job. She finally said, okay, I'm going to the border. Maybe because Donald Trump said, I'm going to the border. So Kamala's like, well, I'm going to beat you there. I mean, again, it is her job. And she's been months on the job, months being tasked with trying to deal with the border, and yet hasn't bothered to do a darn thing other than go and take a photo op down in Guatemala, right? She's got to be photographed saying she's going to fix the root causes of the whole problem. Good luck. Why don't we fix some of the root causes that do actually leave some people, black or white, at disadvantages in America? Those are economic problems that Kamala Harris, I'd appreciate you fixing. But instead, she's off to Latin America. And then when she actually has to go to the border, she goes 800 miles away from the border because apparently her team thinks that it's less politically dangerous to go to El Paso, Texas. So, I mean, look, not even Texans are happy with this. Even Democrats in Texas. You've got the Democrat representative, Henry Cuellar, who's criticizing Harris, saying, look, she just isn't going where she needs to go. Apparently, she thinks it's politically safer to go to El Paso rather than the place where the crisis is raging on. And look, it's Texans that are having to deal with it. So Texans are trying to take the matter into their own hands. Texans are trying to put up a border wall themselves. I get it. When the federal government isn't there for you, and often it's not, and you should never expect it to be in some of these situations. Although when it comes to borders, you'd kind of think that's a no-brainer. But Texas is willing to go the extra mile and defend itself. And I understand and I respect that. 57% of Texan voters, by the way, disapprove of Biden's handling of the border crisis. And this was a poll that was done after Kamala Harris traveled to El Paso for a little bit of a photo op. Look, it's not working. Whatever they're doing, it's not working. And whatever they're selling, Americans are not buying. Right? So he can sound as leftist as he wants. I guess that's a desire to appease the most extreme elements of the party, from Bernie Sanders to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Ilhan Omar, who thinks somehow that our country is on par with ISIS. So he's so busy appeasing them instead of actually doing anything to fix the economic situation for so many Americans here right now. And that's a problem. I'm not going to be completely negative, though. Credit where credit is due, and I'd like to see something happen on the antitrust front when it comes to big tech. He put a woman named Lina Khan, who's been very, very outspoken, has written about her concerns regarding monopolies and big tech. She is now head of the FTC, but she's just one woman. I don't know how much she can get done. The White House, I will point out, came out with news that it is crafting an executive order that's aimed at promoting competition throughout the U.S. economy. They're trying to basically lessen the dominance of some big banks, big air travel. So this would be some of the big airlines, shipping, agriculture, and of course, big tech should be part of this too, and one would expect that it is. I'm a big believer in making sure that you have lots of competition in the marketplace, because the more competition you have, I think the better off everyone is, and certainly the consumer is. And so I'd like to see this go through. It could happen as soon as this week. And you need to think about what it's going to mean for your investments, right? Because a lot of times investors get a little bit nervous. The idea that some of these companies might be broken up because they're in violation of antitrust, meaning they have just gotten too big and they are too monopolistic and therefore really leaving American consumers at a disadvantage. That makes some shareholders nervous, but I'm here to say it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. And the reason it shouldn't is because in most cases, in many cases, not in every one, and you have to be somewhat company specific, but in a lot of cases, the sum of the parts is worth more than the whole. And so if you look at some tech companies, Amazon's a really neat example of this. I mean, look at AWS, Amazon Web Services, phenomenal growth and tremendous profitability. The overall company doesn't quite have that, right? But AWS in and of itself has tremendous profitability, is probably going to have a tremendous future going forward. And in some ways, if that were split off, maybe it would be better. It would be better for the company, for shareholders anyway. There are other things that you can look at within the space. I think most of big tech would be better off being divided up, and shareholders would be happy. Not everyone, right? Like there are some businesses like Facebook, for example, that really rely on scale. And so when you have billions and billions of users, that's a really good thing, because if people want to find out what everybody else is doing, they got to go on to Facebook. And so by Facebook having both itself and Instagram and this massive following, that helps it. If it were to suddenly divvy itself up, I question whether or not its business at this point is diverse enough to be able to sustain that hit, right? It relies on having many eyeballs. But Apple's another one that you've got to look at, and I think that increasingly people are looking at it. I mean, you think about just the Epic Games lawsuit that's going on with Apple, and they're saying, wait a second, how is it fair that you charge so much for us to be on the App Store, but we don't really have a choice, right? We're like, we got to be on the app if we want to do anything. If someone has an iPhone, Google's going through the same sort of thing. And it may turn out that some of these companies do get split up, but especially in those cases, I think that they can handle it. And I'm a big believer in being sort of lean and mean, and sometimes the smaller companies are more agile, right? You look at GE, which is a great example of a company that just got so big, and GE Financial had its own issues. And that became a big problem for the company. But when you get that big and you're doing so many different business lines, I think it's harder to excel at one. And so I applaud this move. I think we'll see whether or not the president goes for it, but his team is trying to draft this, and I think it would be helpful. And I just say to shareholders that are getting nervous, you know what? Look at Ma Bell, right? Like if you held AT&T, you would have done absolutely great over time. There are many examples where companies have been split up, and it's actually been a much better thing for shareholders in the long run, right? This is what we need: competition. We want to stay competitive. This is what will help give us the edge: low taxes, less regulation, and lots of players. Have a lot of them in there, because the more diverse the marketplace, the better companies will succeed. So I'll leave you on that note, but just remember, I mean, where he's going right now, the country is not in sync with that. And take heart in that. Take heart in the reality of these polls where the majority of people are saying this doesn't make sense, because I'll tell you, it doesn't. Make sure you go to trishintel.com. Make sure you get all your economic, market, political news there. Make sure you check out the Trish Regan store, and I will be right back here. Make sure you download this right now. Do me that favor. Download this video. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're here every day, because I'm going to be right back here with you tomorrow.